Thanks for listening to Leadership Level Up. I'm Brian Prairie.
And I'm Dr. Jeff Williamson.
I am just starting my leadership journey.
And I've been guiding leaders for 30 years.
Our podcast aims to shine a spotlight on outstanding leaders and provide a platform for them to describe their leadership journey and share the guiding principles that have helped them become great leaders.
Welcome to Leadership Level Up Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Williamson. Always glad to have you with us. And we talk with leaders about leadership, about their industries, about the things that they do, and how they uniquely lead others in the process. It's great to have back a friend with us who was on a while back. Dan Chapman is here in the studio with us today, and I want to tell you just a little bit about his story and background, and then I'll properly welcome him back to the show. Dan is a leading voice for Natural Remedies and a go-to media expert on herbs, supplements, and healthy eating. His expertise and genuine passion to create lasting solutions come together from a strong desire to move from health struggles to healthy living. Dan resides in Bradley, Illinois with his wife, Valerie, and his sons, Wiley and Eli, and daughter, Olive. He is active in his local Christian community, serving on the board of directors of South Point Youth for Christ for the past 25 plus years, and is the chairman of the board of directors of Bible League International, a global Bible engagement organization founded by Dan's grandfather in 1938. He considered his faith to be a driving force behind his commitment to helping others and giving back to his community. Welcome back, Dan, for another chat. Good to have you with me.
Oh, this is great to be here again, Jeff.
Yeah, same. We were talking a bit ago offline. I said I could just interview interesting people all day for podcasts, and I would be a happy camper. And so it's always a joy to sit down. It's like in the rush of our world almost, if we're not intentional, we just don't have focused conversations of 20, 30 minutes with other people. And from the first time we did that, it was like, man, that was good stuff. And so I was definitely excited that first time we talked about having you come on and share some of your story and then your family story, both with the businesses as well as with Bible League International, which I was familiar with for several years. But before I met you, I didn't know the family connection and the rich history that you have there. So last time that you were with us, you shared a good bit about the formation and the starting of the family business, the Sunrise Food Stores, and then later on Red Remedies, which we'll talk some about. But I also want to hear a bit of the family story as it relates to the Bible League, because that's a great story as well that when we talked previously. So here we are. Let's jump right into it. You grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and the food was a key to your mom's health, improving and recovering in a lot of ways. And so you really grew up and lived in that rich environment of taking care of our bodies and taking care of our diet and things like that, because it just contributes to our overall well-being.
That's right.
And as you've referenced in the past, we are these intricate, complex, miraculous systems. God created us, and these things are meant to work together. And sometimes we can have food or what we intake really fight our wellness. And so I know you're a champion for that. So talk to us a little bit about where the businesses are now and what you would see going forward to say, hey, in 3, 5, 10 years, we hope that this is our impact.
Yeah, so the impact that I hope that we do have is just reaching more people with the full understanding of the complexity of how God did create our bodies. They are really remarkable machines, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And just like God created a whole creation, He created us as whole individuals. And so you can't separate out any one thing or function. We say we're body, mind, spirit.
Right.
But even within the body, I mean, we're an elbow and we're a knee and we're a brain and we're different organs and different systems. And when one part of that body is out of balance or not functioning well, it has a ripple effect throughout the rest of the body. And so the other thing that we have found is that by adding in herbs and nutrition, the way that God designed, because He knew where we were going to be, right, in this place that we're at. And so these amazing herbs and nutrients can literally feed our bodies back to health. And so that's what we've seen. And so my goal is to help people have a better understanding of that, not to be afraid of herbs and what they might be or what side effects there might be. Herbs are really amazing and can have a significant impact on helping somebody live a healthy and a full life, just like they did with my mom so many years ago.
And you mentioned that, such a big part of your time and your energies are toward education and speaking and training people on what can really be the outcomes if they make those adjustments as needed. So
that's right.
So that's a lot of your energy now is focused toward really telling the story or sharing the story in conversations like this as well. Yeah. So the impact, what would that look like? More impact, more people having the opportunity to feel great and to utilize those resources that are there. What would that look like? Would that be more stores? Would that be more placement of products in additional places? What would you foresee for that?
Yeah, we're Red Remedies is in about 1,500 health food stores around the country right now, but there are quite a few more that we're not in. And so it's more locations where our stores are, but also so many of our customers buy directly off of our website. Actually, by the time this airs, we'll have a new website up, which will be fun, and a health quiz to help people kind of sort through what are the things that are going on in your body, and then from that information, how can we best point people to an appropriate product to help them get started? We talked last time a little bit about where would you even start, right? I mean, there's so many different products and things that you can do, and so helping people kind of boil down, here's the couple of things going on in my body uniquely, and here's a couple of things that you can do supplement-wise, but also food and lifestyle-wise in order to make a real impact in your health.
Right. And with the decades of learning that you and your team now have, you probably see some trends and patterns where you could say, well, it's not certain, but these kinds of responses have looked like this in hundreds of past.
Absolutely.
So you want to start there and give that a try.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So one of the things too that I think I described as a parallel theme in your family story, along with the businesses, is your grandfather starting an organization called Bible League International back in 1938. And since that time, now here we are. Whoa, man.
85 years later, actually.
Yeah.
This is the 85th year of Bible League International, yes.
I wasn't a math major, but I talked well. So I was like going, 85 years. And from grandfather starting and launching that driven mission purpose kind of an organization. And then dad was the chairman of that board for an extended period of time. And now you serve in that. So I'd love to go back and have you share some of that story about like what struck grandfather to say, I care about this. This is really important to me as a matter of my faith. There's something I want to do to solve a problem as he would perceived it back in 37, 38.
I think so many good things in this world happen out of some sort of struggle, something that's hard, right? I mean, that's why my parents started Sunrise Health Foods, was out of a health struggle that my mom had. And so Bible League really was started out of some of the same way. Again, back to the 1930s, my grandfather in the 1930s would have been a 30-year-old young man and very driven towards success in the real estate world. And so he was working hard, and the Great Depression was hard, but he's like, I got this, I'm going to work harder yet. Just like, most men and women in America, as they're kind of rebuilding, the country and rebuilding their own lives. And so my grandpa was in the middle of all of that. And as a young man, he had a heart attack. So the stress got to him. And, when you have a heart attack in the 1930s, there's not a whole lot that was going to happen for you other than rest. And I'll say maybe hope. And so my grandfather, as a young man, again, in the hospital, had an elder from his church that came and prayed for him. And my grandpa was a Christian at that time, but what he didn't understand is that you could actually have a relationship with God. He didn't fully understand that. He believed in God. He went to church, but he didn't understand the relational component. And that elder prayed a prayer for him that his health would be restored, and that when it was, so there was an expectation of an answer to that prayer, that my grandpa would do something significant to serve the Lord out of gratitude. And my grandpa was so struck by that prayer because that elder prayed to a God that he, like, it almost seemed like he had a relationship with
Could
him.
he hear you?
Right.
Yeah.
And my grandpa said amen to that prayer. And almost like he was riding on the coattails of that elder at that time. And so he started to read the Bible a little bit. And for the first time, it started to make sense to him. And his health did improve. And as he was getting stronger and getting better, he kept being reminded of that prayer and figuring out, what in the world am I going to do to serve this God who I'm realizing is not just in heaven somewhere, but he's actually my Father and wants a relationship with me. And he cares about me, a single individual. How incredible. And so as part of that recovery, sometime later, my grandpa went into a hotel room in Biloxi, Mississippi. And when he walked into that room, he saw the Gideon Bible sitting on the dresser. At that time, the Gideon Bibles were sitting out on the dressers. They weren't in a drawer, if they're even in rooms today, right?
They've moved a little bit, unfortunately.
And my grandpa had an immediate thought when he went in, and that's that how interesting that every hotel room in America has a Bible. And if so, then but why not every home? So my grandpa was kind of a dreamer. He was a creative. He had lots of big ideas. And so he thought at that moment, he said, I am going to set out to put a Bible in every home in America that wants one. And so on the first day of his vacation in Mississippi, he went to the bookstore and bought 12 Bibles. And one by one, he handed out those Bibles that day. And it was always in the context of a conversation. And if the individual he was talking to had a Bible, he wasn't going to give them another one. He was working hard for those. And so he would simply encourage them to read it. And then if they didn't have one, he would say, well, if you promise to read this one, I'll give it to you. So there had to be some commitment on the receiver's end. And that's really significantly what Bible League does today. I mean, it's a very large organization. We're active in about 75 countries. But we work through the local church, one-on-one, through Bible studies, to engage people in God's Word and place Bibles where people don't have them. And, here we are today. We have placed one at a time almost 1 billion scriptures.
Billion with a B.
Years, with a B.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is fascinating about Bible League, and that I'm really grateful for, is my grandfather never went to work at Bible League. He was only in his lifetime ever a donor and a volunteer. He decided that he would continue to do real estate to make his living so that he could do the real work that God gave him, which was to volunteer at Bible League and put the Bible in people's hands. And
that's terrific.
My grandfather, or my dad, did the same thing through his life, and I'm so blessed to do the same. I'm a volunteer and a donor of Bible League.
Yeah. So what does it look, you can see where I'm going to go. Yeah. What does it look like from grandpa bought 12 and handed them out to over 1 billion handed out to families and homes all over the world? You talk about leadership. I mean, leadership by example, because he had an idea and a need and a mission and he executed on that. But then it grew to this thing that we know today is a huge global organization. Yeah. I'm a strategy geek, so I always go to, like, how do you create that network, and how did you communicate to local churches and communities and in countries, maybe even in places that don't welcome any kind of impact like that. Man, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, and really, in my grandfather's time, it was very much listening to what he felt like God was putting on his heart and making sure that however that was set up, my grandfather was very intentional, that it was going to be clear that as Bible League was, quote unquote, successful in carrying out its mission, that when success came, that it was going to be very clear to everybody around that it had nothing to do with my grandfather and only everything to do with the Lord's work. Yeah. And I think that's even part of the reason that in his mind, he never went to work there.
Right.
I think there was something about that for him where he wanted to be sure that it was the Lord's work. And so he said many times, the best place in life to be is fully dependent on God. And so he would make these declarations about, here's the need in the world, or here's the need in the United States, here's the need in this country, and we are going to go do this, but we ourselves are not capable. We are going to need the Lord to show up. And so what you find out strategy-wise, whether intentional or otherwise, is that people rally around that mission.
Okay, I want to be a part of
because
that.
it's important,
How
right?
can I help?
And it's exciting. And so I think that's really part of leadership at that high level is what is our mission? What are we after? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And I think if that ever if people get a sense that it's a bit selfish, then it's not exciting anymore, is it?
Yeah.
All right. And so the mission has to be bigger than you as an individual.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think is very true, needs to be true of any healthy organization.
Yes.
Is that it's not dependent on any one person, including whoever it is that might be, structurally at the top of that structure. It needs to go beyond the individual.
Yeah, even as you were starting to say that, I was thinking that's so transferable to any kind of organization, really.
Yes.
If people see the purpose and mission and value of a company or a nonprofit or a healthcare organization, if they see that it wasn't founded just for me so that I could line my pockets, and I want people to be paid well for the hard work that they do. So I don't want to be misunderstood there. But at the same time, as you talked about, this wasn't done because I think I have a good business model. We'll distribute these over the world, and they'll pay for this, and it'll be great, and we'll be set. No, it was like they operated parallel to that, and when you have a purpose that's bigger than me, that's not about me, I think that's one of the finest forms of leadership. And so people, like you said, they see that and they experience that and say, oh, I like that. I think I'd like to help. How can I be a part of that? And so when it comes to all the needs, any mission has to have some sources of revenue, has to have some way of paying for the services that they do. And I taught fundraising at a university for 10 years, and I would often say to them, it's about connecting with people who care about the things that you care about or the things that you're doing, and giving them an opportunity to share in that labor together. Now, if you have somebody that has no interest in that, they don't want to hear about it, they don't care about it, we can still be friends, but they're not going to be your supporters. They're not going to be your donors. It's people that already have some level of burning in their heart to say, I want to spread this good news. I want to help make sure that everybody has the opportunity that I have had.
Yeah.
And then they rally.
That's right.
And so that's when it's really a fun nonprofit or a fun business or a fun ministry to work at. It's of course more than fun, but it is fun because it's like, this is so important and we get to be a part of that. And have joy as we do it. And joy is attractive to everybody. They can see the difference between joy and put on happiness. And so the joy of providing the gospel to people and having that available to them, that's a passion and that's a calling that your grandfather and then your dad and now you have continued to carry forward. I think that's terrific. And I love that applies to any kind of organization that wants to be successful.
Yeah.
Buy in, give it your heart, and people will want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And I encourage really everybody, you ought to all be volunteering somewhere.
Yes.
We all have some level of leadership capacity or something to give in us. And so often, I've gone to meetings or done things where I'm like, I do not have time for this today. I've got too much to do, but I have found without exception that when I take time away from whatever it is I think I need to do for my business, my personal self, maybe even my family, that is that the Lord has blessed that tremendously. I walk away sometimes feeling like I've gotten more today than I was able to even give. Yeah. And so it's a blessing to be able to volunteer.
Absolutely. I mean, I say amen to all that. I that's why I volunteer for different organizations, because I believe in their work. I believe in the people on their team that I've come to know, right? Again, relationships are everything. We realize this is a just cause that has good people working in there, and they're serving other people through that nonprofit, through that ministry. I just want to spur them on and help them do what they do. And that's when we hear people say, man, I just wish I could give more. Man, I just wish I had more time to volunteer because I love this nonprofit. I love this ministry. And that's really the joy of giving, is that we do it with good intentions and right reasons, but we come away feeling like, I think I got more out of that than I gave, but I came and served, and the joy and the blessing is just there. It's Amazing. So good. Oh, good. Well, man, here we are. Time is gone again. But thanks, Dan, for coming in and visiting with us, sharing your story about your family, your business, and the mission of Bible League International. So great to have you, and I'll look forward to future conversations.
Thanks. It's been my great pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Leadership Level Up. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Leadership Level Up. Please subscribe so you don't miss future conversations with great leaders.